But moving forward, running back Josh Jacobs. Packers are on, a bit of a heat right now. I think they have to get right, and there's no other team to really get right with the success of the Chicago Bears as of late. They lost to the New England Patriots last week. After Drake May kind of, I wouldn't say torched that defense, but he found a way to get guys deep into the safety area and the cornerback area. So Josh Jacobs for me is going to get higher on the 69.5 rushing yards against the Chicago Bears. Chicago is one of the worst running defense, giving up 133 rushing yards per game. Top five worst defense when you have a rookie quarterback. That's a bad combination. He had 13 carries for 95 yards last week against Detroit, who Detroit is actually a pretty good defense. Yes, Aiden Hutchinson is out, but they will find a way to continue success with Josh Jacobs and count him for higher on the 69.5 rushing yards.
I'm actually going to go with the flip side. On this matchup, DeAndre Swift higher than 67.5 rushing yards. You just alluded to it. The Bears have been a dumpster fire really since returning from London. They haven't scored an offensive touchdown in their last two games. And obviously New England was a spot that everyone thought, hey, they're back home. This is a New England team is not very good. The Bears need to get this win before their division games start stacking up. And obviously they laid a huge egg. Drake May, like you said, outperformed Caleb Williams vastly in that game. But I like Swift in this spot. The Packers, while their run defense overall has been pretty good, and they're kind of hit or miss. If you look at the stats, they've allowed the third most runs of over 10 yards in the league this year. They've given up 41 runs over 10 yards in just 9 games played. So if you take that math into effect, they're giving up over 3 to 4 of those carries a game. And right there, that gives you a chance for Swift to be explosive enough to obviously hit that total, hit that higher than mark. So I really like him in that spot. Also, the Bears just made a change, firing Shane Waldron as their offensive coordinator. They're going with Thomas Brown, who was their passing game coordinator, I believe. But what's the best friend for a young quarterback? It's a run game.
Run game.
Their offensive line, what's the best thing to get them going, which as bad as their offensive line has been, it's establishing the run. So I think there'll be opportunities. I think Swift will get a lot of touches, and I think he'll hit this mark.
Yeah, and whenever there's a change in the organization, right? It's always a fresh light. They have to find a way to get things going, and change was to be made. And watch out for is it Eberflus that's still there?
Yeah, obviously he's still at the helm, but their offensive has been terrible. Their defense, which Eberflus is known for, they've started the year strong, and they've really, obviously, like you alluded to, their rush defense has been a lot worse than they expected the last few weeks. But like you said too, Darren Rizzi came in, and they get that juice from the change. Maybe with Shane Waldron gone, they get some juice in that offense.
Let's hope that happens. Wide receiver for me, George Pickens. Steelers, I feel like Steelers are just so under the radar this year going into the season too. You kind of had a feeling that everyone was hyping up the Ravens and the Bengals, even though the Bengals had really a bad defense coming into this year, as results showed last year. But I think Pittsburgh has just a bunch of dogs on that team, man. George Pickens for me is probably one of the most underrated wide receivers in this game. And if you look at his dynamic, the way he can, make things happen against a really tough secondary, especially in the division, but George Pickens, higher on the 0.5 in rushing, receiving touchdowns against the Ravens. The Ravens are the worst passing defense in the league. They have allowed 22, I said, touchdowns this season, which is absolutely insane. When people think of Baltimore, they always thought about, really good defenses, right? So maybe when I said, Humphreys is out, right? That's hurting them tremendously. But Pickens, I feel like, got in the end zone last week. He has a real good relationship right now with Russell Wilson. I can see it happen again where George Pickens gets in the end zone. And, like I said, with Baltimore struggles in the secondary, let's see what they're capable of doing. But, I think that Steelers are ready to go this week against a division opponent, and no better way to get George Pickens in the end zone this week.
Yeah. I mean, he is a dog, literally, Pickens, and he's a Georgia Bulldog, so that works out too. But, uh,
Like it.
but yeah, he was supposed to be like literally probably a top 15 pick coming out, but he got hurt his last year with Georgia, so he slept. Steelers have, obviously they have a great track record of drafting in general, but they've really hit every time they take a receiver. They've had a lot of success there. So
Yeah.
Pickens has been a stud, and it seems like him and Russell Wilson are, have really good chemistry so far. But yeah, so I like that pick, especially against a very weak Ravens defense. I'm going to go with Puka Nacua, higher than half a touchdown receiving or rushing. But he has not scored yet this year. I know he had the injury in his 4 starts, has yet to score a touchdown. He had 14 targets against the Dolphins. We know his target share is high. He got thrown out the week before against Seattle. And then his first game back off the injury, he had caught 9 of his 11 targets against the Lions. So I really like him to finally, get into the end zone this week. It's a pass defense with New England that's very middle of the road. This is also a desperate spot for the Rams. Everyone thought they were going to beat Miami on Monday night. Now they got to go cross country, East Coast, early start against the Pats. And the Pats team that's feeling pretty good about themselves. They've won 2 of their last 3. I'm sure that they think that they found something a little bit with Drake May, and I think Stafford's going to go in there and shove it right up, where. So I like Nacua to get in the end zone at least once. I think I would even consider, if you want to juice it up a little bit, Underdog and go higher than 1.5. I think he gets in twice in a big come out game for him. So I like Puka Nacua here.
Yeah, I think Nacua, like you said in these notes here, I really think he is due. You know, it's just a matter of time that he gets his feet back into gear. Cooper Kupp is a solid receiver too, and whenever like you saw Puka Nacua go off was because Cooper Kupp was on the field, and it allowed him to be more successful due to that threat of Cooper Kupp. And Demarcus Robinson's having a real good year too. He's coming along. Kyron Williams, a threat of the backfield. So I think like all eyes doesn't have to be on Puka Nacua anymore, and I think he can make the most of it. So I really like that pick, and I think heavily of him in fantasy this week. I really think that Christian Gonzalez will probably play Cooper Kupp, and he'll probably get Jonathan Jones.
That is the caveat, because Gonzalez is good. I don't want to, the thing with Nacua and Kupp is they can kind of line up anywhere. I know they prefer Nacua coming in the slot, so
right.
I would think he gets Jones. Gonzalez is more comfortable playing outside.
Yeah.
So it's.
And I was gonna say like either Marcus Jones or Jonathan Jones, whoever lines up with him. Like I don't think that Jonathan Jones is such a big threat. Like you said, if Christian Gonzalez is guarding him all game, watch out. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of them trying to mix it in with, and I hope Sean McVay has this idea of mixing and matching different wide receivers on different cornerbacks or even safeties, and take advantage of the linebackers even across the middle. Because let's call it what it is. Patriots linebacker core is not the best,
Nope.
and they're beatable on the front. So for me, with the tight end position, it's Hunter Henry. If we're talking this game, higher on the 36.5 receiving yards against the Rams. Rams give up the 10th most receiving yards against tight ends. It's 59 yards per game. Last week they gave up, I think, 45 to Miami's tight end Jonnu Smith. And, Henry is becoming May's security blanket, right? Like, you're seeing Kayshon Boutte get, down the field, and, Pop Douglas having real good success as well. But when you think of a guy that Drake May can always go to, and if you think quarterbacks in general, like all the good quarterbacks, guess what? They utilize their tight ends. Look at Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Look at Aaron Rodgers when he had good tight ends with the Green Bay Packers. Even with Conklin, dude. With Conklin, he's been really good this year. When he does get the ball. So I think Hunter Henry is becoming that security blanket, whether that's second down, third down, whether that's like second 11, third and 6. Like he always can find a way to get the ball to Hunter Henry, and I think that Drake May will utilize him more and more. And 30, he didn't really have great success against Chicago, but the week before he had a great game.
Yeah, he did
So
against Tennessee.
yes,
Yep.
so pump the higher on the 36.5 receiving yards against the Rams.
So, you just talked about the quarterback and tight end connection of Mahomes and Kelsey briefly. I'm actually going to go with Travis Kelsey lower than 7.5 receptions, which is going to listen. This is risky because the last couple of weeks, Kelsey and Mahomes have been on the same page. He's hit this mark easily the last several weeks. So this is definitely a risk. It's a big spot for the Bills defense, though. Obviously, everyone knows that they have not gone over the hump of beating this team postseason. Last year, the regular season, there was that, Buffalo kind of got one on him, and then Mahomes was talking about the referees and this and that as he was shaking hands, and he was looked at as a poor sport. I don't think Buffalo's forgotten that either. But this is a Bills defense and they've had some good defenses under Sean McDermott. This is the best they've ranked in his 8 years as head coach. They've been very good at kind of taking away, the best option, number one option for other teams, and they've created a lot of turnovers. I actually really like Buffalo this week, aside from obviously the underdog and the matchups here that we're talking about. I really think this defense gets it done. They're at home. This is going to be a gritty game. Cold. I expect it to be pretty cold in northern New York. It's going to be a tough one. And just Kelsey, I think he's kind of going to regress to the Travis Kelsey we saw early in the year, where he's not getting off his routes quick enough. And, I expect Buffalo to throw a lot his way. McDermott's a very good defensive coach. So I'm going to lower than, less than this one. So, yep, 7.5 receptions.
When I think of Doug McDermott too, right? Like you got to believe into his system. Here's the thing: Matt Milano out for the year, right? They get rid of Tre'Davious White. They do have injuries back and forth with Von Miller,
Micah Hyde and Hoyer. They both lost.
And Micah Hyde and Poyer. Yeah, Poyer with the Miami Dolphins now. So I just think like on McDermott, he is so good at crafting up defense that Josh Allen can just really thrive, right? And whenever you have a good defense, guess what? You don't have to do as much on the offensive side of the football. So if you have Josh Allen, who's more than capable of finishing drives, getting points on the board, whether that's touchdown or field goal. But the issue for me this week is if you're looking at the game with Josh Allen versus the Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City has a very, very, very good defense this year. And their rushing defense is outstanding. So you're going to have to utilize the passing game more and more with Josh Allen, because I think they will find a way to create that offense one-dimensional with James Cook and Ray Davis trying to run the ball down Kansas City's throat. I don't think that will happen. I think Kansas City has a very good defense. And if you were to look at the points, the margin, it's going to be very, very low scoring game. I really think that both defenses are going to play outstanding. And I think the offenses of Kansas City and the Bills will struggle. So that's why I do like the lower on the 7.5 receptions, because I think that Buffalo will strategize and make Travis Kelsey a priority, because we all know the middle of the field is where he likes it. Well, guess what? Create some conflict in that secondary